Right. Good evening, everybody. It was very quiet. I hope everyone's ready for a good meeting and not deep in thought and not me reading the papers last minute, I hope. As chair of the Scrutiny Committee tonight, I'd like you to welcome you all to the meeting. I'd like to introduce Vice Chair Councillor Roberts. We're supported by Gemma Gray from Democratic Services. I'd like to thank members who are joining us, members of the public and officers who are here this evening. As usual, just a few housekeeping points. So there are no planned fire alarms. So if it does sound, please treat it as genuine and follow staff instructions to evacuate the building safely. And just a note that the meeting is being recorded and will be published on our YouTube channel for public access. To ensure that we have a smooth recording process, I just ask that members and officers please raise your hands when you'd like to speak and come in on anything that you'd like to raise, and just make sure that you press your button before you speak and wait for it to go red. As we remind the committee every meeting, the Local Government Association's workbook refers to scrutiny as a critical friend. That's the role of this committee. It's to focus on forward thinking and adding value and making positive changes to the operation of the borough. It's not a place to appropriate blame or focus on negatives. It's a place to focus on improvements. We'll begin shortly with apologies and declarations of interest, followed by officer presentations and reports as outlined in the agenda. I'm looking forward to a productive and focused meeting. And with that, we'll go to agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. I've got apologies received from Councillor Clinton and Councillor Edwards. Are there any further apologies?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. And I note that no substitutes have been received. Are there any further substitute members?
None received, Chair.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 3. Do any members have any interests to declare under the Members' Code of Conduct? Nope. Thank you very much. Agenda item 4 is to confirm and sign the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 21st of January and on the 9th of February. Can we confirm that the minutes are a correct record? Thank you very much. Swiftly on to agenda item 5 then, which is the public forum. Can I remind everyone that the purpose of public forum is to provide an opportunity for members of the public to raise matters of wider community interest that relate either to an item on the agenda or a topic within the committee's remit. It is not a question and answer session, and it's not an opportunity to raise personal or individual issues. They should be directed through the appropriate channels. Also to note that as chair of the committee, I reserve the right to intervene and stop any inappropriate comments or questions at any stage. Do any members of the public in attendance wish to speak on an item on the agenda or a topic within the remit of this committee? Richard, you're up. Should grab your chair and a mic. Do you want to go right at the end there?
All right. Thank you. Can I just read a letter I've written out first to explain? It's
just the microphone works in the fella.
E-bikes, transforming urban mobility, offering an eco-friendly and efficient alternative to conventional modes of transportation. However, the increasing prevalence of teenagers on e-bikes has become a growing concern in our communities. Their reckless behaviour is not only frightening vulnerable residents, such as the elderly, but also poses a real threat to pets and disrupts public places such as football pitches. For instance, many elderly citizens have reported being startled by teenagers speeding on e-bikes, causing them to feel unsafe walking in parks or footpaths. Additionally, there's been cases where dogs narrowly escaped accidents due to these uncontrolled drivers. football pitches are an essential part of our communities and recreation, and are often left in disarray after being damaged by bikes riding over them. This issue is gaining attention across the UK, and as more communities struggle to find solutions that ensure safety and maintains harmony, statistically, incidents involving teenagers on e-bikes are increasing, leading to calls from immediate action from parents, guardians, and community leaders. I'm speaking for Homer Hill in Cradley, which I've only been there 3 years, but I'm seeing an increasing amount of these youngsters that are ruining it for the locals. I've made so many lovely friends up there. I was told the Black Country people are very friendly, and I'm finding that out. But unfortunately, a very small minority are spoiling it for the rest. And so that's what I'm just walking around. I've got about 330 signatures, which I suppose isn't enough. That's only walking around the park and taking my dog for a walk. But I've met so many lovely people around there, and especially the old little ladies that have been frightened by these youths that are doing it. So I don't know what is a good way to try and. It's a national thing, we know, but if anything can be done, then I'd be only too pleased to hear about it.
Thank you, Richard. Damien, I'm going to ask you to come in on that. I'll give Richard the chance to come back on anything Damien says, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And yeah, sorry, I didn't get your second name.
Collinson.
Mr. Collins, yeah.
Collinson.
Yeah. So yeah, Collinson. Yeah, I thank you for bringing this to the Scrutiny Committee tonight, and obviously raising it with us. We haven't. I was made aware just recently, obviously, that you would be bringing this here tonight, but we haven't had any reported incidents directly from Homer Hill Park, as far as I know. And obviously, you know, the channels of reporting it would be to the local councillors and our ASB team. They've got no records of those reports as well. But certainly, you know, I can give you reassurances. Just recently now, you may have seen it out in the press that we've put a PSPO out there, a vehicular PSPO, which is a public space protection order. That's a special order now that gives the council enforcement powers. So e-bikes, scooters, off-road bikes, and obviously vehicles being driven in a dangerous way as well. So that gives the council enforcement powers now with our enforcement officers that they never had before. And it's also been encouraged by the police, which it also gives them extra powers as well. So, you know, our zero tolerance from Dudley Council for ASB is key for us to put forward. So this is a petition you've got, I understand.
Yeah, I was getting so annoyed with these youngsters upsetting the local people, and they're saying we're not going up there anymore because of this.
Okay. And
there's lots of people saying I would do this and do that, and some people have said they've rung up, but nobody seems to do anything.
Okay. But what I would encourage you and other residents to do as well is report it to our ASB team. There is an out of hours number as well, and I'm quite happy to give you that at the end of the meeting. That's easily accessible, and obviously report these incidents. You know, because obviously, you know, we need to target problematic areas, and if Homer Hill Park has got a growing problem there with these e-bikes and scooters, then obviously we need to enforce that, as soon as we possibly can. But obviously, without knowing about these issues firsthand, then obviously it's going to be a struggle for us, and working in partnership with the police to deal with that. But as I say, we've got that new order there now that gives us powers to deal with those. So it won't be only your area; it'll be right across the borough. And, you know, it's quite a comprehensive public space protection order to be got in place. So through you, Chair, I'm happy, you know, for officers to take those names away tonight and look more into that and see what we can do and feed back to the resident. Then we'll have your details if we can.
Yep.
Yeah, and we'll feed back to you directly.
Yeah. It was brought to my attention, your leaflet last night.
Yes.
Last night about
okay.
That. So
we're happy to. We'll have your contact details as well if we can through you, Chair, and we'll feed back to you directly of our findings. And if you can give us some more information
Yeah.
then we can look into that.
There's so many people asking me, have you been to a meeting? Have you done anything?
Yeah.
And, you know, some people, the elderly, for instance,
Yeah.
you have no idea what to
Yeah.
do, where to start.
Yeah.
And I just felt,
Yeah.
um,
And obviously, you know, it's, as you've said, it's a different, you know, different age groups that struggle with this. I would call it a blight to the community, you know, and that's a big reason why we brought these PSPOs in place. So, you know, it's key now that we get the information from residents and we target these problematic areas. So I thank you for bringing that to us tonight.
it was my pleasure. Thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hilary, do you want to come in?
Well, I agree with you, every word. Mind you, my park, local park, it used to be a mile hole. So if they try to cycle on there, they get stuck. The community that Palmjet and I represent, we have an awful lot of these bikes and scooters. And what I find is people don't know whether a scooter is legal or not. And you and I, we know they're not legal at all. And these scooters, and they say, oh, he was only on his scooter. And I'm saying, but he shouldn't be on a scooter in the first place. So I think educating the public that these are illegal. They can only be used in areas where the council has designated, haven't they? And they've provided the scooter. And even I didn't know that. So I agree with you totally with what you want to do. And thank you, Councillor Caulfield, for what you're doing, because it'll help an awful lot of people.
Thank you.
I think obviously this is my ward, and as I was saying to Richard before the start of the meeting, I'm not necessarily surprised to hear that it is a problem, but I was surprised that it's not been raised sooner. In that, you know, we haven't had reports as that from councillors of them from yourself. But obviously, like, for that many people to have signed a petition, obviously it is a real blight on the park, and it is something the council needs to do. I do find sometimes that when we're talking, I think there is a difference between when we're talking about off-road bikes, which I know a lot of people struggle with across their ward, and when we're talking about these e-bikes and scooters. Like, they are two very different things that are happening. And I suspect that very often what's happening with the e-bikes and the bikes it is parents buying these, not knowing themselves that they're illegal, and their kids are going up over the park and causing trouble.
Some of
with
the
them.
parents on the back of them.
Exactly.
Well.
And we're always going to have that minority of parents who are buying them, and they don't really care whether or not they're legal or not. But I think particularly on e-bikes rather than the off-road bikes, what we see a lot of the time is them not knowing themselves that they're illegal. So I guess my request or ask of Councillor Caulfield is in that engagement we're looking at this issue, whether or not parks in the borough, particularly Homer Hill Park, if we're saying it is a problem, can just have some signs up to that effect so that people know. And then I think dealing with it as a ward kind of casework issue, while if you pass this on to Damien and the officers and deal with it as a council approach, I'll make sure I have a word with Mitch, who's our PCSO for the area, and just make sure that he's including the park in his rounds. He is one man covering 5,500 houses, so don't expect to, like, you know, he's not going to be there every day, but I'll have a word with him just so he knows. Okay. Was there Jonathan?
I just want to add on to obviously what the chair has said. I think it is important you do let the local police team know, because the sergeant that covers your area also covers the rest of Halsey, Nicola Chester, and she has been very active in dealing with this kind of situation. And I know the police are also working closely with the council's community safety team in looking at other locations where it's happening, like Quarry Bank. So I think it's important, obviously, liaise. Obviously, you've got the details from Councillor Caulfield, but obviously do pass this information on to the local police, because the sergeant there is fairly active in getting this sorted. So hopefully you'll see a difference going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, it's knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Everybody is saying do this, do that, but nobody seems to know what to do. I was told by a policewoman the other day that the police don't do this. It's the highways police. It's the ones with the motorbikes and the cars that do it. I don't know how right that is. You know, who do we contact? Where do we go from there?
I'm going to get Councillor Caulfield to come in on that, and then Councillor Kess, was that hand up? Yeah, bro.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to reassure the resident and obviously the other members of the committee tonight, that obviously with these running alongside these PSPOs now as well, the council have got some more now direct resources to deal with that. So we've got a mobile command centre that we're procuring at the moment. So that will have a telescopic camera on the van that will be able to scan different areas. We've got mobile CCTV. We're bringing drones on board. We're also bringing on board as well covert camera cars that will be in different areas. So this zero tolerance now from the council is going to be a strong deterrent against all these things. And I think the biggest difference, I think, as Councillor Bills has said, and you've said yourself and others, the difference of a push-along scooter to a motorised vehicle, which is what it is. It's the only resemblance is the name to scooter, but actually it isn't. It's a motorised vehicle. So these powers that we've got now and these resources are really going to tackle these problems and hit the problematic areas really hard, and with that zero tolerance approach. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Caulfield. Councillor Kettle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we've had this problem over at Woolscote, and the only thing you can call these people are lunatics on occasions, because they go in the park with these small bikes and they're doing about 70 miles an hour, some of them. You know, the scooters will do 40. And I believe in fact, I saw one on the television at an organisation in China where they got them doing 70, and they were a scooter, but they're a much more powerful thing that we've seen over here at the moment. And it just shows you what can arrive on our streets overnight almost. I'll make the point that is there no one from legal here who could guide us? I mean, Councillor Caulfield has done a good job in some respects, but do we have anyone from legal here that could help us? Yeah.
I work in legal services. What specifically do you need advice on?
In the meantime, you have other powers besides what Councillor Caulfield has mentioned. The legal might guide us to be proactive quicker.
I think Councillor Caulfield's set out the best means that the council has of addressing these issues through the PSPO. The police have powers relating to the highways, but we are not the police. It has to be the police on the highway. We have the PSPO, which our officers can see to enforce.
I suspect this conversation is going to end up leading into the next agenda item anyway, because my pushback to you, Councillor Kettle, was that actually one of the big problems we've also got is resourcing. And when the West Midlands off-road bike team for the police consists of, I can't remember if it's 4 or 5 bikes for the entirety of the West Midlands, obviously that we're always going to be playing catch up with that. But I think that's probably straying into the next item, which is the safe and strong, the community partnerships section. But safe and sound, that's it. Thank you. Is there anything else on this before we move on to the next agenda item from members?
Can I just say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's by covering this, it'll probably stop theft as well, because a lot of these bikes aren't bought by the parents. They're stealing them off other children. And this is one of the problems as well. It's not the fact that they're just frightening people and making a mess of everything. They're actually stealing the bikes as well. So hopefully it'll cover that as well with the police.
I think you're spot on. That's certainly what we found in Woolscote a few years ago when we had the problem was at its height in the park. It's the same couple of kids each time. So thank you for that. Are you happy with?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just
brilliant.
Forward. I didn't know what to expect.
That's okay. Well, I hope you've had a warm welcome.
Whether I was going to get interrogated or what. But no, it's been kind of you let me speak.
Well,
and hopefully we can go from there and I can tell everybody as I'm walking around what's happened.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. I've got your email, but Gemma, do you want to just take, brilliant, yeah, just your phone and email, and then you can leave the petition with us as well.
It's rough and ready, I'm afraid. But
that's fine. We're used to while they So with that, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is the annual update on the Safe and Sound Partnership. Have you got this is the one with the presentation, or is this the report? Sorry. Report, brilliant. I'm getting mixed up. Brilliant. When you're ready then, if you'd like to present the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm James Prestwich. I'm the Director of Housing and Homelessness, and included within my remit is overall responsibility for the Safe and Sound Community Partnership. So I will speak only quite briefly, and then we'll turn it over to you, Chair, for questions. So hopefully what you've been able to see through the report is the work of the Safe and Sound Community Safety Partnership over the course of the last year. The Community Safety Partnership is something that we as a local authority are required to do through statute, albeit it's exactly the kind of thing the team are very committed to doing, even were that not the case. Priorities for the safety partnership are identified through an annual strategic assessment. So that includes community engagement as well, and an annual meeting which actually took place last night with residents of Dudley, called Dudley Have Your Say. So an opportunity for direct involvement from citizens of Dudley as well in looking to scope and shape the priorities of the work that we do. Over the course of the last year, and as Councillor Crawford has already alluded to, one of the main pieces of work that has been the introduction of the new PSPO for antisocial vehicle use. We've also launched a new hate crime reporting tool. Have through this work of the partnership funded a number of organisations to deliver work and activities, diversionary activities across the borough, particularly focused on the very vulnerable or those who are seen to be at risk of offending. We have dealt with over 16,000 antisocial behaviour reports, and our street officer service is being expanded to improve visibility, which I think speaks to the kind of final point that I wanted to make. And clearly there is always more that we can do. The survey that was carried out with citizens last year indicates that perceptions around crime and around antisocial behaviour remain high. So although Dudley is actually the safest borough in the Black Country, it's really clear that there's a lot more work to do around reassuring citizens that the borough is safe. So with this in mind, and Councillor Crawford alluded to earlier, we have a zero tolerance approach to tackling people who have committed antisocial behaviour. And some of the measures that we've talked about, such as the introduction of a antisocial behaviour van, the possibility of using drones as well to target certainly things like off-road bikes, indicates the priority that the council and the administration are according to this. So hopefully that serves as just a very brief overview of what you will already have seen within the report. But if there are any questions, then we'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you for that. Who would like to kick us off? Was that Councillor Cobb?
Thank you very much for that. I think my first question is in relation to report. In our ward, we seem to experience a lot of underreporting of incidents and crime. And speaking to the local police, they agree with us and they say that this is a big issue. And this is one of the reasons why we're not getting more resources to tackle antisocial behaviour. And I just wondered what we can do to address this.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the point about visibility in particular. So increasing the street officers team, I think, is quite a high impact way of being able to demonstrate that we are out on the streets and that we're approachable. Clearly, there's a lot of work to do in partnership with the police as well. If there are crimes that are going unreported or are going underreported, so the work of the partnership and that partnership with the police is really, really important for that. We've got, we've spoken publicly quite a lot about antisocial behaviour. There's been a number of articles in the press over the course of the last couple of months that highlight some of the approaches that we're taking to tackling antisocial behaviour, and certainly, I would be keen for us to continue to have that public conversation. Anything really that increases the number of interactions with members of the public, so we can try and offer that assurance.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. Reading through the report, the overall report is heavy on how partnerships are formed and the legalities of it. I think what I'd like to see as a ward member is on page 31, for example, the 6 bullet points there, is how the partnerships reduced offending. Have they reduced offending? By how much? And how can we go further? So I'd like to see a report coming back to this committee with those actual points about, you know, what's happening out there realistically on the streets to reduce all of those points. Similarly, on page 32, you know, what progress has been made. I don't expect you to have the answers to those to hand tonight. If you have, I'd be disappointed that they haven't been presented to us. So I'd like to see a future report with all those figures in. I mean, it's good to know that Dudley's one of the safest in the Black Country, but I'd like some context behind that in how we're one of the best in the Black Country. Yeah, just the reductions or the improvements. If it's sensitive data, just whether we've improved or reduced, and whether the perceived reduction in staff is having an effect on those targets as well.
Councillor Snowden.
Thank you, Chair. Fellow members, I welcome the report, and I fully understand, obviously, the role that the Safe and the Sound Partnership sort of delivers for the borough, like the local authorities. So I'm fully aware that obviously we've done some changes to the ASP policy, changes to tenancy changes, and also there's more collaborative work with our partners. And I fully understand the subgroups functions and how they deliver in terms of fulfilling our obligations. And I think my question basically is really considering the size of the borough, we have this strategic group that meets on is it quarterly, monthly basis? Is it? How often do they meet? Okay. I think I've raised this issue previously with Balvinder and previously with senior directors. I think what's missing for the Dudley Borough in terms of best practices, having something similar for each of the towns on every bi-monthly, every quarterly, where people, for example, housing, where partner agencies can come together with housing, highways, other agencies, and look at issues at a more local level to sort of see where the patterns are, like with heat maps, ASP, etc., and have more coordinated response and action. And I know this happens in other boroughs. So I think it's about, yes, it's good work has been done, but I think we are missing the trick considering the size of the borough that this group meets on a quarterly basis, whereas in each of the towns, there's nothing happening at a more joint up level where key partners can sit around the table, ASP, housing, other housing associations to look at issues and implement sort of a proactive action. You know, I think other councils do that. And I think we are missing the trick. And hopefully Kathy can sort of say something why we still haven't sort of grasped this nettle, because I think we are behind with embracing best practice. And I think it's about us, if we're going to be really looking forward to with an improvement plan, as outlined by Balvinder last year, we need to embrace best practice from other councils and really help deliver better services for our, it's not a criticism, it's just basically, it's the size of the borough having something more local on a periodic basis to look at issues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Catherine, do you want to come out on that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Sahota. And I think what I'd say at this stage is absolutely noted. And I know that this is something that you and I have had a conversation about previously. I think in terms of the Safe and Sound Board itself, this is our strategic partnership board. So it brings together all of our key partners and responsible authorities at a strategic level to kind of set the priorities around safe and sound. And much of the work that you're discussing, I suppose, is delivered at an operational level, but through the subgroups rather than on a town by town basis. So I think probably the conversation we need to have is how we better bring the work of the subgroups together into operational conversations at a town level or however we decide to do it. So it's absolutely noted. What I'd say to the committee is that this is the strategic oversight in terms of the board, and we need to think about how that operational work that's currently done by theme could or should be delivered additionally or differently. But thank you.
Did you want to
Yeah,
come back?
so do I take that, Kathy, that is that something that you are going to be looking to? Because I think it's a win-win situation really at a town level. We do have that work and, you know, we can look at some partners who already do it. And I think, like I said, we have discussed this. And so I welcome that commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts?
Yeah, just to come back, you mentioned the meeting last night. How many people attended that meeting, and are there any early indications of outcomes from that meeting?
So I haven't got the numbers of attendees, but speaking to officers that were present, the numbers weren't great, which, you know, as you'll know, can often be the case with public engagement events. So I think there's work to do for the partnership to understand how it can better engage with citizens.
I mean, could that be linked up with new hyperlocalism and the community forums and make use of those better and better communications across the borough?
It's certainly something we can look at. There's also, I should have mentioned as well, a consultation survey that goes out too. So the consultation and the engagement with citizens isn't just focused on those in-person events, but you know, engagement is an issue across the council in terms of how we look to engage citizens. So it's certainly something that we can look at.
Councillor Caulfield.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Roberts. Well, just to key in with what you're saying, really. Now, obviously, the new ASB policy goes in front of Cabinet on the 25th. So obviously, we're in the preliminary stages now, and obviously, the new resources and things then are coming on board now. So, you know, that zero tolerance approach, it'll be hard to give you figures this earlier on until obviously we've got the services in action. But I think you'll probably find as well a lot of the questions that you're asking will key into the new neighbourhood model as well that Anne will present in a few moments. So, you know, and setting up those partnership groups, as you've said, I've already been engaging with the police and others bringing on board, and obviously Kathy is involved in that as well. But we're at that starting stage with this zero tolerance approach now with these new powers and things. So obviously, by the time we've got that in place now and we get to the next quarter, then I'm sure James will have, you know, some more promising figures to deal with you. But we're at that cusp of making that delivery now. So, okay.
Thank you. Councillor Castle.
Would you be able to turn on your microphone? Sorry, so Kathy can hear. Thanks.
I do apologise. Sorry, Kath. I'm looking at paragraph 55 and the additional investment provided by the Department of Health and Social Care. Obviously, we've had it now for 4 years. But how big is this problem is the question I'm going to ask. And how many people are we dealing ex-prisoners? Obviously, these numbers will fluctuate the way these people move around. And I'm beginning to wonder if this isn't showing up with the amount of beggars we have on our streets, especially in Stourbridge, you know. So could you give me an indication of the size of and the money involved in what we're dealing with here?
I haven't got the access to that data, so much of that will be held centrally by the Department for Health and Social Care, figures on prisoners released, etc. I would be able to get some data on in terms of homeless people that come to us who have been released from prison, but that would only be a part of the picture.
The point is, what you're actually saying is that you're not going to give me an answer to the question, are you? I've asked for the numbers and the amount of money involved.
Yeah.
And how many people are we being asked to help, and how many people are we helping? You know.
Yeah.
It's a big problem, especially people that are leaving the forces and things like this. And I'm just wondering if this isn't a symptom of another problem. You know, this is where I'm coming from. And so, will you please circulate to the committee the amount of people involved or in this system and the amount of money we've had over the last 3 years? That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to get you the information that I'm able to get to you. So some of it might be held centrally by a government department, but I can get, I will get what I can get and provide it for you.
Just to follow up on that, I think this is probably what you see with problems with councils, local authorities across the country. Is often there's lots of different teams within lots of different organisations working to tackle the same problem, and it's that cross-organisation working that becomes a problem, especially around sharing data. So I think what James is saying, that absolutely he's going to share what we have access. If I'm understanding right, we're absolutely going to share what we've got access to, but some of that data isn't owned by the council and we don't have access to, and getting it is a bit more difficult when it's owned by either the combined authority with government departments with the police. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, so very, very happy to go away and to get as much data as I'm able to get that we hold and that is publicly available to provide to you. Yeah.
All right. When you get this information, will you also inform us of where the limitations come?
Yeah, very happy to do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sahota.
One final comment. Obviously, like I said about best practice, there's a town borough we border. They meet on a monthly basis in each of the 6 towns to look at tasking issues. So if another Black Country borough can do something like that, then I think it's something we should be looking at, where they meet on a monthly basis to look at crime and SP issues at a town level. And that is basically, and that they have one actually best practice for what they do. So I think that is something we shouldn't be ashamed of looking at other best practice and learning and see how we can improve things for our communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. First of all, I fully agree with the first speaker on this, with the reporting. It's been a problem for a good many years now, and I spoke about it in this room on numerous occasions. It is on crime and various activities are underreported within this borough. We need to find a method so we do actually get information exactly what is taking place. Reading through this report, it tells you what the problems are, no answer about how we're going to solve them or how many cases we're actually dealing with. Looking at the situation, antisocial behaviour, it would be nice to know how many cases per annum that the officers actually deal with and what type of cases they are, so we could get to grips with what was going on. But there's nothing of substance in here to tell us where we should start to get these things put right. And it is a burden for all our locally elected members, with residents coming to us complaining about this, that and the other. Most of it is antisocial behaviour related. The other problem that I seem to encounter as well, because I do pay a lot of visits with housing managers, is some of our tenants with the standard, the way that they actually live their life, which does affect the other neighbours, and in some cases make some of our properties very difficult to when they're void, relet. So, you know what I mean, I think it'd be better if we got something more substantial with facts, figures, and also sort of encourage people to complain. They got a complaint rather than just say nothing and we deal with something we don't know what actually is going on out there. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. Was there anything else from any of the members? I've got a couple of questions. One is, first of all, on the violence against women, which I'll find what paragraph it is I go through. I think it starts on page 33. Obviously, the government's announced its violence against women strategy. I think it's to halve violence against women over the next 10 years. What is the council doing moving forwards to play its part in doing that? A big part of that strategy, obviously, is it being a multi-system approach to reducing it. Has the council considered what more work is going to be needed to meet that obligation?
Yes, it has. I would also point out that there's already a considerable amount of work that goes on within not only the Safer Communities team, but also very specifically the housing and homelessness services as well, to provide advice and support to victims of domestic violence. We're part of MAREC as well, which is the information sharing and reporting partnership, very actively involved there, and we have specific officers who are trained in supporting victims of domestic violence. So I actually think our story there is quite a good one to tell. We've got quite a strong track record of combating and supporting victims of domestic violence. But clearly, there's always more to do, and we will look through this partnership and others to see how we're able to do that.
And would you say that so the council's already doing great work? I think that's really good to hear. Would you say that our partners necessarily know to signpost to the council when they're in contact with victims, bearing in mind that actually the council probably isn't the first place that the victim would think to go for support?
Yeah, so I guess there's housing and domestic violence are often very closely interlinked, either because the victims might already be living in Dudley Council housing stock, or because actually the kind of point of contact is when the victim applies for housing because they're homeless as a result of that. So beyond that, it's very much the partnership work that we do with the police, and through that Marek framework that gives us that insight and gives us that partnership approach.
Okay. Thank you. Cascade, was it on this? No. Okay, you come in anyway then, and I'll save my question to the end. You come in. Do you want to just do your microphone?
Paragraph 68 and 69 about these workshops that have taken place, say, across the Black Country in one sense. Well, where were they and when were they and how were they advertised? That we've never heard anything about them. And who was the renowned expert that came to help us, which is great, have someone on our patch that knows something about it. But they're talking about a project of right-wing extremism, but 95% of the people in these jails are not right-wingers. They're Muslim extremists. And unless we talk about the whole subject of what's happening in our society, it isn't a fair representation of what's going on. And we had this a couple of years ago when we had one of our officers give us a report, and all night he never mentioned what I've just said, that 95% and MI5, these are MI5 figures, that 95% of the people in our prisons are not right-wing extremists. We can't ignore what's going on around us. I think this is a misrepresentation. I would like to know where these meetings took place, and who organised them, and who spoke at them.
Kathy, did you want to come in that specifically on that thing about where the meetings took place, if you can?
Yeah, of course, and thank you, Chair. So these were meetings that were arranged under that funding and were predominantly, so they're not really meetings, I shouldn't say they're meetings, workshops, predominantly aimed at teenagers, young adults, because there's significant concerns around the risk of radicalisation through online games, online chat rooms, etc. So very much aimed at younger people, in particular, advertised and working with schools, colleges, etc. You can see that Mead Park was one of the experts who was delivering those sessions. It's in paragraph 68. In terms of the whole conversation around extremism and threat and that kind of thing, we are in the process of arranging a specific briefing for our members on our annual counter-terrorism local profile. So that will be where we can share information on the regional counter-terrorism profile and the more local terrorism profile in Dudley. It's official sensitive information. We have to have the Home Office approval to release it, so it's not in this report, but it will give you an idea of actually where our challenges are in the borough around terrorism, and what our concerns are. So I'd suggest that, Chair, if that's okay, that we pick that conversation up separately through that CTLP briefing.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, Ian. I think, do you want to come in briefly just on the contents of the report rather than wider?
I would like to help in a way, in that we had a briefing a couple of years ago on the fire, And there was a brilliant man, a man called Omar Afridi, and he was brilliant that he knew the wider spectrum. And compared to what we'd been given at this council, he was in another league. So, you know, if it's any help, if ever you can get Omar Afridi to come and help on that subject, it's most helpful.
I think that's something that we can look at for a report back to the committee at a future date. I think that's fine with you, Kathy. Yeah, brilliant. Do you want to come in?
Yeah. I'd just like to come back to Councillor Kettle with the comments about 95% of people in prisons are Muslim extremists. I think that's a bit scary, really. What can you base that on any facts and figures?
If I'm quoting national newspapers, it's a bit dated now, but a few months ago. But what I've stated is correct. MI5 gave a report along the lines that I've mentioned.
I think I'm not going to let this conversation continue because I don't think the demographics of prisoners is something that's in the remit of this committee, and what they're in prison for. So I don't think it's worth us continuing. I do have a question on community cohesion. I think we saw last year. I think there were two occasions where the council was kind of in its emergency mode with issues around community cohesion. And actually, I think that we had a scrutiny session on that early last year. And I'll repeat what I said then, that actually I think the way the council responded to us as members was brilliant. I felt very informed. I felt like the council knew what was going on, and I felt able to work it within my community. It wasn't my ward didn't necessarily have any of the problems that we were facing, or at least not substantially so. I think one of the things that does worry me is, while I hope I'm wrong, I am a pessimist, and I don't see how community cohesion isn't going to get a bit worse in the borough before it gets better. I think we see different types of extremism at the moment across the country. I think within our politics, I'm trying to watch my words carefully, but within our politics, extremism is becoming the trend. And I think you often see extremism flare up around international incidents. And obviously we've had Trump's war in Iran a few weeks ago. And I think my worry is that may well trigger some community cohesion issues within the borough and across the country as well. So my question is, it is my understanding that we only have one officer, one member of staff, whose main function is on issues around community cohesion. Is that true? And is that able to meet the demand on them, bearing in mind that there are neighbouring authorities that have more staff than that?
So I think, and I think what the report does quite well is set out the different channels that are available for us to look to target extremism, both right and left, religious and non-religious, and also the work of the Hate and Cohesion multi-agency partnership as well. What paragraph 79 talks about, the way that community cohesion is concerns are reported and logged by the community safety team. So the importance is that team is flexible, and that they're able to respond to where the predominant need is. So at times of escalating tension in the community, I would expect to deploy the resources from across that team very specifically. So I need that flexibility within the team to be able to respond to issues. So as far as community cohesion is concerned, I'm satisfied that as things stand, we have the expertise and we've got the capacity within the team to deal with things, albeit something we clearly need to keep a watchful eye on.
Thank you for that. Were there any other questions or comments from members? Councillor Stanley?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, very briefly. One of the things that disturbs me, and has done for some time, is when we keep promoting ourselves as the safest borough in the Black Country. If I was the Chief Constable of the West Midlands, I would say, well, if they don't need any more police officers, because everything's all right. So we're doing ourselves a misinjustice by saying that, because we need some extra resources, but this is a deterrent from getting those resources, in my opinion.
Thank you for that, Councillor Stanley. Are there any further comments? No. I've got two things written down for further actions. One, I think both of them have come from you actually, Councillor Sahota, so I'm going to check I've actually got those written down right. So one is a report back on stats and best practice across the Black Country, a more in-depth look, kind of substantiate some of the claims within the report. I actually think, as this isn't a report on community safety, it's a report on specifically on the partnership. I don't think there's an issue with how the report's written, but I do think coming back and looking at that more in depth in the next municipal year probably does make sense. And then a second one is, and I do think that actually it's probably something that is worth making as a recommendation for Cabinet to consider, is this monthly, and I'm going to have to ask you to kind of share what is again this best practice about those monthly crime meetings, because as you were talking about it, I was thinking, well, no, that's something I think community forums should pick up, but actually they're not nearly regular enough to do that properly. Do you want to just do your microphone? Sorry.
It's actually in Sandal where I used to work for my sins, but obviously it's where you have a Safer Sandal partnership. You then have borough tasking meetings where they discuss borough-wide issues, but then each of the 6 towns, they have monthly meetings where the police, council, other partners work together to look at issues at a local level. And it's not rocket science. And I think for the size, our borough is a similar size to Sandal. If they can do it, there's no reason why we haven't got the resources to do it as well. It's all about joint up working. And they even go one better. The members get on a regular basis updates on their ASP cases in their wards. We have to fish for that. So it's all good practice, really. And I think there's nothing shy in actually looking at other areas. There's other councils come to Dudley for best practice. So it's a two-way street. And I feel really frustrated, having been a councillor now 7 years, that we still are not sort of looking at this, and particularly because obviously ASP affects everybody, whether you live in a deprived ward or you live in a good ward, it affects everybody. So it's about how we, Sandwell is similar to us. They have 6 towns, we have 5 towns, or whatever. So it's doable. And I think it's just about, if our intention under Balvinder's leadership now is to look at a more improvement plan, then I think these kind of things that we should be looking to embrace and support our communities and our members in the work we do. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to look to Tom here about the process of making that as a recommendation for Cabinet to consider.
Yeah, I think
with the wording of that and with that's within our remit to do on that issue.
I think it would be a recommendation for Cabinet to consider. I think it would fall under executive function, so the wording of that would need to be termed as a recommendation for Cabinet to think about that and come back to. Yeah.
Fantastic. Are there any views on that going to Cabinet as a recommendation? And we're all happy with that. I'm supportive. Yeah, I'm seeing nods. Brilliant. I think that's, do you need anything else to make that more formal, or are you happy with that? Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. There are thank you. Well, thank you for that, everyone. And I think that actually moves us on perfectly. It was almost like it was scripted, Panjit. That moves us on perfectly to the neighbourhood model, which is agenda item 7. So, Anne, is it you up? Brilliant. Could I ask you to present your report?
Thank you. Good evening, members and colleagues. My name's Anne Boyd. I'm Director of Growth and Infrastructure. You all should have all circulated to you the accompanying paper, but I thought it might be helpful to walk through the slides this evening just to set the scene before opening up to questions and comments from you. This presentation and paper actually builds on the last report I brought to this committee about hyperlocal approach to town centres and placemaking, but adopting that kind of neighbourhood lens. I was very grateful for your feedback and constructive ideas and thoughts around how we might improve last time. So I hope that through this presentation and paper, I will have responded to some of your questions, those that arose from the last meeting too. Essentially, the outcome that we're looking to achieve through a change in model is us, or the many outcomes we're looking to achieve, is it would give us a more equitable approach to placemaking, much more joined up teamwork from a council perspective, community stakeholders around individual places and townships across the borough, an opportunity for us to engage and empower communities and really put us on the front foot in terms of bids and investment going forward. So what we'd have through this approach is evidence-based, integrated place plans that are co-designed with our communities. That'll create a pipeline for future bids, and those improvement plans, and also it contributes to our improvement plan as a council in terms of building trust, transparency, and collaborative working across communities. This is not a new approach, as many of you will know who have been in public service for a long time. Since the late 90s, really, I guess successive governments have actually taken a policy approach to shifting away from, I guess, doing to community to doing with community, to recognising the value that communities themselves bring in working alongside local government rather than local government delivering to them. And the value that they bring in partnering with us, in becoming part of the decision makers, in helping to come up with solutions because they know their places best, and in securing their ownership, which I think is something that's really important. On that basis, that the national policy position, one of the latest national policies that's actually moving through the House at the moment, is the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill that you'll be aware. They talk specifically within that bill, which looks to be adopted later this year, a piece around neighbourhood governance, and it talks about local authorities creating structures that bring decision making closer to residents, including involving local communities in directing resources, strategic collaboration around place, getting our communities involved, joining up our public engagement, not just across the council, but with wider system partners and stakeholders as well. So adopting a model and moving forward with this kind of model would really put us at the forefront of the very latest national policy. Look, this isn't new to us either. We've been engaging communities for a long time, but and at the moment we've got lots of different methods of engaging communities across our various different townships. A couple of examples are that, you know, in Dudley we have a neighbourhood board as part of that plan for neighbourhoods, the Pride in Place initiative. In Brierley Hill, we've got a successful town board, we've got people's panels, we've got local forums, we've got lots of opportunities for community to get involved, and we've got some amazing work and projects that have come from that. However, it's somewhat inconsistent at the moment around place, so there is lots of opportunities for us to do better. Some of those models have been driven by funders, so funders have said, you know, if you're wanting a future high streets or a towns fund, we expect you to put the local governance and local engagement in place that looks like this. And they've been very prescriptive. Get my teeth in. But this gives us an opportunity to actually learn from what we've already done and scale up that good practice across the wider borough. So a joined up hyper-local approach to neighbourhoods and placemaking will give us greater consistency of engagement across the borough. It'll help us to identify future ambitions, grounded in evidence. Those integrated place plans that I've talked about will involve and empower communities and actually encourage us as teams located in each of those townships to work more closely with our local elected members at a town basis to get involved and be informed in what's happening at a hyper-local level. It will create, as I've said earlier, that future pipeline of projects to support bids, and that's beyond the local regeneration funds that we currently sit on, that have a lifespan of another 12 to 18 months. So this gets us on the front foot in terms of a programme, a pipeline of activity that we can then present to funders, grounded in evidence with the support of our communities to attract even more investment into Dudley as a borough. It's a whole system approach to place. And by that, I mean not just the council, but health partners, police and crime partners, housing partners, multiple agencies coming together around the uniqueness of our places where they've got individual and shared interests. And we've already got some of these models in place with some of our public health teams working at a hyper-local level, and even Jim's team in terms of street scene, the neighbourhood localised model that we've introduced in recent times. So this would put us on the front foot, as I've said earlier, in terms of pioneering a new policy approach. And this next slide was really about what might that look like. So I just wanted to tease out a little bit through the paper and through the slide deck. So we'd look at, and we're still doing research into what the places would look like. I'll come on to that. But we'd look at perhaps 5 individual place teams embedded locally. So not operating from the council offices here across the borough, but actually located in partner or council facilities in each of our townships. So they become part of the community. This is not a one-off approach to engagement. This is a regular conversation with community, delivering, listening, working together to actually drive action at a local level. Those integrated place plans will be grounded in evidence and give us a holistic approach to improving life at a local level. As I've said earlier, it'll give us that opportunity to scale up what works now, the things that we already know, and good practice nationally that we can weave in to those individual place plans at a local level too. And, all of this will actually help us to have both a place perspective, but also a programme perspective in terms of bringing our staff to work at a very local level embedded in those community areas. So this is a quick model, happy to talk through it or for you answer any questions on it. This is what it might look like in practice, and this kind of reflects good practice across the country. It also reflects some of the lessons that we've already learned in places like the Plan for Neighbourhood, the Neighbourhood Board in Dudley, the Town Board in Brierley Hill, for example, where you've got a place board, you've got a wider place partnership, you've got a place-based team, which is what we don't yet have across regeneration and neighbourhoods. And that's something that we're wanting to bring to the table here. And Dudley as a council, not directing, but supporting, advising, resourcing, facilitating community to come together, preparing bids, administering and working with community and businesses at a local level to drive the change. So these next few slides were some of the questions that came up at the last meeting. So I wanted to pick up on those and expand a little in terms of the thoughts behind there, but welcome further input from all of you. So how will places be defined? This is perhaps the most important question, isn't it? Because this is the one where everybody will say, what about us? And this is so important across the country. We hear this, no matter how local we go, it's often not local enough for our communities because one side of the road can feel like a very different community from the other side of the road. But it has to be practical, and we've already got some defined areas that we work within. So we've got some existing boundaries. We've got some existing forum footprints. We've got stakeholder boundaries. So talking to our integrated care board, for instance, they've actually got footprints that they operate within at a local level. We also need to understand community affinity because it might look like they live next door. And I think I mentioned last time, within 8 miles of where I live, we have communities that point in very different communities. So, within an 8-mile radius, you've got some that point to Liverpool and Merseyside, some that point to Manchester, some that point to Stoke-on-Trent and the Midlands. So isn't it interesting that affinity at a grassroots level that community has? So we need to get it right with our communities. But we want you to help shape that. So we'll look at the research and the evidence. We'll bring forward a map in terms of what that might look like. And we'll seek your thoughts and community thoughts on how that might look before we move to putting in any kind of permanency. And we'll maintain that conversation because we're not going to be in all places at all times. We don't have the resources, as you know, to actually deliver that. So, but we'll keep that conversation open because we want to make sure that we are delivering in tune with what our communities want from us. And of course, we're currently undertaking a refresh of our place-based strategy, which talks about 5 locales within the borough. And part of that will give us an evidence base upon which we can come up with the footprints that many of you will have different ideas as to what they will look like. This slide talks about, excuse me, what an integrated place plan might look like. Excuse me. Sorry, croaky. And I won't go through, you can see the principles here, but it is what it says on the tin. It's integrated. It's not just a plan to grow the economy. It's not just a plan for community development, not just a plan for transport and infrastructure. It pulls together all of those around place. Some people will refer to it as master plans, but an integrated place plan carefully compiles all of that. So you've got a rounded view of what communities want and need at a localised level, and it pulls all of that together into a single plan. How will we ensure a consistency of approach? So talking to the team, we've talked about creating an integrated place plan playbook. So this is basically a model that we would train our staff to make sure that we've got consistency in terms of ensuring the right guidance and approach across all of those areas. And yes, our areas are different, and this model plays into the uniqueness of each of those areas. But actually what we're looking for here is a consistent and fair approach to engaging with our communities right across the borough. So we'll be training our staff, we'll make sure that they are supported to engage, to prepare bids, to mobilise the plans, and engage communities at every stage throughout that process. You also picked up last time how we'll make sure that we're not creating competition amongst our places, so that we go from borough-wide strategies to localised place strategies. Well, because some might say competition's a good thing because everybody's striving to kind of be better as a community. But there will be common themes that come through each of our communities. And we probably know some of those in advance, don't we? We've talked about things like antisocial behaviour this evening. There's probably going to be something about young people, children and young people, and provision for them, where there are strategic themes emerging. And by that, I mean those that will emerge through probably most of the plans. We will address those as a programme across the borough. But we will also have programmes that are very unique to places at the same time. And we'll have agreed methodology for prioritisation across those place boards. So we would see a place board in each of those locations and then a collective board that would work together with the council to actually come up with a methodology for prioritisation, because we will have to prioritise resources, whether they're ours or whether they're external investment that we've brought in to respond to local needs. It's highly unlikely, sadly, when you look at public finance at the moment, that we're actually going to deliver everything that everybody needs all at once. What would citizen involvement look like? This is quite exciting, and we've talked to local people in terms of their appetite to get involved. And people are already involved in a voluntary capacity in lots of different ways across the borough already. But that can be everything from feeding back in terms of a consultation, sharing ideas, concerns, opinions, co-designing some of the solutions, because people in their own townships know better than any of us from a strategic perspective as to what solutions will work within place. Some of those are very local and will play into the nuance of place. But we'll get lots of local insight from local people. They know their neighbourhoods better than we will. So some people will have influence within their local community, so they might not be able to volunteer, but they are powerhouses in their ability to be able to convene networks. So there's lots of opportunities, is the point here, for people to get involved at a local level. And these are some of the benefits that we've talked about already in terms of what a new model might deliver for us. So in short, greater community engagement and empowerment and ownership, which is critical for strong and resilient communities going forward, a far better understanding of local needs and an ability for us to create local bespoke solutions that are relevant to their local places, not just a one size fits all. We'll unlock local insights, human capital and partnership resources at a place level. So having worked in models like this before, you know, when we're working with partners and stakeholders, not just community, that's where we find we can pool resources, many of which already exist, but we're able to draw them together in a different way in response to local plans and evidence. And as important as with all of that is, as I've said earlier, the fairness around consistency of approach across all of our places, which will bring, I believe, improved trust, communication and transparency. I'd be very happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Who would like to kick us off? Councillor Bills.
There we go. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for that. You're sitting here, you've got two people who live in Dudley but have worked in Sandwell. Well, I think we have to go back to 1974 to understand why Sandwell and Dudley are so different. Sandwell was made up of 6 towns and they chose the name of the valley that went through the middle, Sandwell. They don't say they come from Sandwell, they say they come from their 6 towns. Whereas in Dudley, whoever was around in 74, and I'm pleased to say it was none of us, they chose to have the name Dudley. Sandwell did actually think a few ideas, because I was around in 1974. They thought of calling it West Bromwich, because everybody would say, oh, we know where that is, it's because of the football team. But of course, all the people in Wednesbury would be going, hang on, we're not having any of that. So they chose that name. And so each town has carried on to be developed, and they think they come from Wednesbury. They think they come from Albury. They don't think they come from Sandwell. We have huge issues in Halesowen because all the awful things that were done to it in 64 were actually blamed on Dudley for 74. And it's very hard to understand. So this idea that you're loyal to your town has always been confused because we say we're Dudley Council. So I welcome this. And all I can say is, as a head teacher in Wednesbury, I could make one phone call, and I could say, there's a slate off my roof. The grass needs cutting. You haven't put the football goals up, but I'm also worried about a pupil and I need some help with them. And then that town team would take it. They would sort it. Just imagine what it's like if you're a head teacher now in Dudley. You'd have to be going, well, I'll ring them and I'll ring them and I'll ring them. So if we can go through this and stick with it, because I'm looking around, there are certain people who remember we were moving to this in 2016, slowly moving to going to town teams. Buildings were selected, the police were going to join us, but then it all changed after that and we never did it. So if we're going to do it, we really have to have commitment from everybody, every political party. We will pursue this regardless, because if we don't do that, then we'll never have, and I know we look longingly over at Sandwell, but we have lots of things that are good about us, but that is one strength they have, their community. So when it came to housing, for instance, all 6 towns in Sandwell have got this same amount of new housing, different sizes, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 5 bedroom. So each town has sort of become the same. Whereas in Dudley, we know north of the borough is nowhere near the same as the south of the borough. So if we can get this going, I've only got 2 more years. I shall keep on going on about it because I think it's the best thing I've heard for years.
Thank you, Councillor Bills. Is there anything you want to come in back on that, Anne?
Thank you, Councillor Bills. And that I guess what you're describing is exactly what we would like to deliver for this place, for this borough. And that just really struck me when you talked about making that one call and town teams, because that's exactly what we're looking at here. So, you know, a team that very local people know, that very local ward members know, that actually will then provide better briefings in, you know, that will give the council greater visibility and connectivity into the lives of local people and much better insight. That's exactly the kind of thing, one team that's committed to a place. That's exactly what we want to see. So thank you for your feedback. That's much appreciated.
Got Councillor Stanley and then Councillor
Right, yeah, thank you. Just a couple of items, Mr Chairman, if I may mention. Looking at the current range of engagement structures on the presentations, Alzo in bid, does it not exist anymore? I wonder why it was missing from the, what's that? Yeah, but the Alzo in bid has always been a good flagship for us, to be perfectly truthful. But following on from Councillor Bills, I've had to live with this since 1966. That's before the 1974, when we were taken over, and I use that word, by Dudley, because I'm from the extreme north of the borough and from Sedgley Urban District Council, along with my colleagues from the old council in Colsley as well, the Urban District. And then more locally, of course, we had the Brierley Hill Urban District Council as well. So, you know, people still refer to me, the good old days of Sedgley Council, and being local, how quick it was to get things done. When in Dudley, you have to wait forever. But I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Sahota.
The comments made my fellow Halsey North councillor, I think it's long overdue. I think we have got lost in the fact that although it's, you know, obviously Dudley took its name from being the largest town, obviously, whereas in Sandwell they just went neutral. I think we get confused, like just like Colsley feel they're the forgotten part of Dudley. We tend to feel we're the forgotten part of Dudley. Sorry, Halsey. You know, we border the second city. We got motorway junction from Junction 3. And yet we haven't got the castle, we haven't got the zoo, but we've got a lot of heritage in Halsey. So if you look at the Dudley tourism brochure, there's nothing about Halsey in there. So I think it is about recognising the different strengths of each town and building on those going forward. And I think, like I said, I just hope the commitment is there from, obviously, I don't think it's a political issue. I think we just need to make sure we give each of its towns the fair share. Where I get a bit lost, as somebody who worked in Sandwell but lived in Halsey since 2000, is what are the 5 towns? I know we got Brierley Hill, Stourbridge, Halsey and Dudley. Is the other one Sedgley? Is the other one Sedgley then? Who would tell me that, Jim?
Sedgley.
What are the 5 towns at Dudley? It is Sedgley then.
Was
Okay.
the Sedgley?
So Sedgley, okay, so obviously Sedgley covers the northern, okay, so,
We haven't got Colsley's chains.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I may,
Yeah.
this is where all of the footprints are different for different stakeholders, which is why we need to pull it together. So for some it's Sedgley, for others it's Lye.
Okay.
You know, there is a programme around Lye. So this is where we need to make sure that we are.
Okay. I think my understanding is, going back to, I'm a bit of an anorak as well, 74 when the councils were changed. My understanding was Dudley was formed out of 5 smaller councils: Sedgley, Brierley Hill, Dudley, Halsey and Stourbridge. Is that right, Jim? Because you've been here the longest. No?
Oh, Jim.
Jim? Is that right?
Councillor Stanley might.
So those are the 5 councils. So in a sense, it's about going back to we're going back full circle, back to the future. And I think it's needed. And I think, like I said, it's, you know, if you got a team that's based in your town, it makes a lot of difference rather than sort of, so hopefully going forward, that's positive. Then I think the other key thing here, Anne, is obviously the town hubs. Now, I'm assuming, obviously, I think what probably happened was with the austerity, everything got cut back years and then everything was centralised. So we are going back there. So I'm assuming then in terms of town hubs, there'll be somebody from housing, environment, highways, adult social care, maybe education. Those are the kind of hubs, people you think you would have in the hubs for each town. Is that correct, or go on?
Yeah, so that's a wider conversation
Yeah.
around how we come together in a
Yeah.
bigger team. So initially, this is myself and Jim working around the regeneration
Yeah.
team and the neighbourhoods team.
That's it.
But I know from talking to colleagues across the council, they're very keen to go, oh, this is great, and from our wider health partners.
that's cool.
So the where we would be located
Yeah.
is the conversations we
Okay.
need to have next. The places, how we would carve up the borough into those places that we've talked about, but also where would we be located? So we're visible and accessible to local community. And can I just while I've got the mic, if you don't mind, can I just apologise for not putting Halesoe in bid on? This was just examples, that's all. Vicky would kill me if she thought that I was neglecting.
I'm told. Okay.
So apologies for that.
That's good. And I think the other thing I just wanted to clarify, my last question was obviously, I think, I forgot what I was going to say now. And I think, obviously, when we did the retrenchment a couple of years ago with COVID, etc., we sold a lot of our assets, a lot of council properties, etc. So I presume we would then have to ensure that, you know, we would have to then cohabit in some council buildings or partner buildings that already exist in each of the towns. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Were there any other hands up or comments, Councillor Roberts?
Yeah, thanks for that, Anne. My last role as an officer was with Wiltshire Council. So we had 5 councils merged into one in 2009. And then in 2019, we then formed 18 area boards based around the market and cultural town. So I welcome this with open arms. And if re-elected after May, I would love to be on this committee to work with you on that. It makes sense. It makes sense. But I think we just need a bit more definition, and that will come, I hope, about how places like Gornal, Cosley and all the small settlements fit into that.
Thank you for that. I've got a few questions, if that's okay. I mean, I'd echo from what Councillor Roberts and what everyone said, actually, that this is exactly how I feel local government should be structured in a place like Dudley, that frankly for much of the borough doesn't exist. You know, I've been to Dudley more times in the 2.5 years I've been a councillor, the rest of my life combined. It's not a place I feel connected to as a town. It's a place I'm born into as a borough. And, you know, I'll stop short of declaring independence for Cradley and Woolscope, but actually, like, people do feel entirely separate. And actually, in my ward, people feel separate from Halesoe. I have to deal with people who feel very irritated that people in Woolscope have to go to the Halesoe Forum and then their bins get collected by Dudley. And it's all, people feel very local. I know, as we spoke about, I used to work at the LGA, and you do go to places, particularly old counties, where people do feel deeply connected to the name of the council that they live under, and that's just not the case here. And I think this is a really good way to get people to actually buy into the work of the council more as well. It's going to feel, if this model works at its best, it's going to feel like the council is less of a different place. I think one of my questions is about how we're going to make sure that we're still involving those communities that are not part of a larger town. And because if we're only going to have 5 individual place teams, how do we ensure that somewhere like Cradley, or I'll use Quarry Bank actually, so I'm not just talking about my own, but somewhere like Quarry Bank that is its own place, that doesn't fall into Halesoe and Stourbridge, Bridie Hill, how do we ensure that those place-based teams are actually giving Quarry Bank its fair share, and those like smaller town centres like it? Do you want me to do one question at a time, or do you want to go in there? You go in there then.
Thank you, Chair. I'm smiling because it's reminding me of when I did, I led a team doing exactly this, and there was a reason why. There was a town partnership, and it was all about the town plus hinterland, and of course everybody was deeply offended at being referred to as the hinterland. But I'm smiling because it was making life better in Frodsham, Helsby, Dutton, Sutton, Aston, and you know, there was a big long list. But actually, and that sounds daft, but it was so important at making people feel involved. So it wouldn't be practical to carve up the borough into 15, 16, 17 places. But actually, within those places, I think it's important that we name them. So this might be, you know, the team might be centrally located in the largest settlement within an area, but I think we need to pay tribute to the communities that we're serving within each of those townships. That goes a long way. I learnt that a long time ago, making sure they're named. And I live in an area called Cheshire and Warrington. Technically, it's all Cheshire, but Warrington was not going to have it. that, you know, it wanted its own name. And that's the power of communities. And I respect that. You know, they want their identity reflected in the names of the teams that are serving them. So that's just one way in which they can see themselves as part of a place.
Thank you. Another one then. I think it's really good that we're focusing on community involvement and making sure that this is something that's happening with rather than to the community. And I think you've set out really well the reasons for that and the benefits of that. I think it would be good to know the practicalities of making sure that happens. I think we heard in the last report about the meeting that happened yesterday and was poorly attended and people didn't turn up to it. How do we make sure what does community engagement look like in this process? Is it working with us as electing members only as representatives of that community? Is it putting on forums within communities? If so, what kind of scale are we talking about there? Or is it working with kind of existing residents associations and things like that? Or is it all of the above?
Thank you, Chair. I would say all of the above. So this is not just with respect working with local ward members. This is about really true community engagement. And I referenced the playbook, and I think that's important because for me, this is that model where we say, engaging with youth groups, engaging with faith groups, engaging with, community and voluntary sector, local business community. So there is a list and a model, and there is proactive engagement reaching out. And look, it'll take time because people will probably roll their eyes and think, oh, the council's doing something new, because that's how we all feel often, isn't it? There's something new. They want to get us engaged and involved. But actually, there are leaders in every community, in each part of that community. And I think as our teams are there building trust and rapport and demonstrating that we care and we're visible and engaging, that group will grow. Those people involved will grow. And we need to give everybody an opportunity to contribute. So, for instance, there were some schemes and initiatives that I'd led around place before where people said, I'm out at work all day. It doesn't mean I don't care. But actually, what can I do to help? And people would take responsibility for, I don't know, it might have been leaflet distributing back in the day when it wasn't so much on social media. But equally now, it could be sharing something on social media with colleagues and friends. So there's lots of ways, and I think that's a duty on us to help people to understand that it's not just coming to meetings. That's not the only way they can engage with us. And the benefits for them in engaging around improving their place. We need to be flexible and adaptable, and we almost need to learn with them the best way of engaging and the different ways in which they can contribute to making life better at a local level. So that model is going to be key. That playbook's going to be critical at listing those groups.
Thank you. And just on that, and I am thinking probably specifically about my ward, but I'm sure it's a problem in other people's wards as well. I guess I'm trying to figure out what my question is, but I guess it's more of a, can you consider the way that people's communities aren't always geographic and how people think about their community is different based on all kinds of factors. And so using my own ward as an example, if you're in the kind of the lie side of Woolliscote in my ward, whether or not they're a part of it, you will consider yourself Lie, part of it, you'll consider yourself Woolliscote. And often people can live next door to each other and have different answers based on their faith, because the other three mosques are in Lie. And so it's much more common that if you're Muslim, you would consider yourself as being part from Lie, because that's the community you engage with rather than the Woolliscote side. And I still don't really know what my question is, but it's more about making sure that we understand the complexities involved in how people's identity relates to their communities and making sure that we're setting up these groups around that, particularly thinking about how those borders are going to work for those 5 areas. Because when I think about, again, my ward, I can see how my ward is going to have to be carved up into 2 or 3 in order to suit the different community identities. And I don't think that's a problem. I think we should have these borders bearing in mind that our wards are all the borders are there because we've got to get about 5,000 houses into every ward, and that's not really how communities don't grow at an equal pace. That's not a good way to represent communities. It just works democratically. Actually, I think it's going to be really important that ward boundaries are kind of not considered at all in this process, because they're not necessarily the best reflection of where the borders of a community actually are. And I think also, just making sure that there is consideration for how we're going to get to those hard to reach communities, because actually the people who I think are going to benefit most from this are going to be people who are living in poverty, who live in those towns, who feel left behind, who don't feel connected to council services. And actually we know that those people are going to be the least likely to engage. So what can we do more to reach those communities that is beyond just putting up a forum, putting in a leaflet, like you said? How are we engaging with faith leaders? The council isn't necessarily the most trusted partner in a lot of these communities. And so how are we engaging with other organisations and other groups to make sure that they can be the voice that kind of guides consultation on this, so that we really get this right? Because while I think this is a fantastic project and a bit of work, I'd really like if in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, we don't have to do it again. And how do we make sure that we really get this right?
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot there. And thank you, though. I really appreciate it. And I think the first thing I'll say is start with your last sentence, actually, because for me, this isn't a project. This is a way of life. This is a way of working as a local authority. So it might start off as a project, if that makes sense, because we need to introduce a new way of working, of course. I think recognising, as you have done, that we're all part of different communities. I'm part of this community, but I'm also a grandma, I'm a mum, I go to a local gym, I walk my dog. They are lots of different communities. I'm involved with online communities, with friendships in that sense. So it's very complex, the way in which communities work, and it goes back to that affinity piece. So yes, there are the boundaries around place, and where, as I said, one road will not connect with another road, and we need to give a nod to that and recognise it. But also we need to be proactively engaging creatively in as many different ways as we can to get people involved from multiple perspectives. And that's why I deliberately referenced faith groups, because I think, people might not be involved in what they might deem community or place, but they will get involved in a community from a faith perspective, or it could be a knitting club, or it could be a running club or a sports club. There are lots of different communities within a place. So I think that's quite important. And I think that you comment around hard to reach. My challenge to myself often is, we use that term a lot, don't we? And I always think, are the communities hard to reach, or are the services hard to reach? Because there is a kind of supposition there, isn't there, about that they're difficult people to get to. And I think we need to work harder. I will challenge my team, and I know Jim will his, around how we engage. Perhaps we're the ones who are hard to reach. So it's about, how do we go out there and how do we engage with what I would term respectfully tribe leaders? And I mean by that, people of influence within their own small communities, who, if we get Steve on board, then actually Steve's going to connect us into his community. Or if we get Sue on board, or we get Parmjit on board, or, with him brings his following and his community, for example. So I think we need to be smart and tactical in how we engage. And I think we need to have that transparency and legitimacy as well. But the most important thing for me is the hunger to engage. And this is not just a box ticking exercise where we say, yeah, we've got 2 people from there, 1 person from there, 1 person from that age group. But there is a genuine appetite for us to really create an integrated place plan that reflects the needs, the diverse needs of a community in place. And it isn't just about, right, well, I've fed in my views, see ya. It's like, hang on, this plan is going to be a 3 or a 5 year plan. It's our plan, not our plan, that we're going to go off and deliver. So stay with us and work with us to deliver it. Tell us if we're not moving fast enough, big enough, bold enough going forward. So that's what I mean about it not just being a project and not just being a one-off consultation that people feed into and then they might never hear anything back. But actually they say, yeah, we know this person's not going away, this team, and we get regular updates and we get an opportunity to feed back and be part of something. So this is more of a movement that we want to create within our communities to work with us. So lots of big ambitions here. Hold me to account on this. We're really excited as a team, and I know Damien is and Simon is, around the difference that this can make to our communities truly.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Sahota and then Councillor Stanley.
Final observation on this, and I think obviously, like I said, I welcome it. I think one thing that's missing from this study is, I think if you look at all the Dudley local plan, each borough has sort of a hierarchy of centres. Obviously, Dudley has got obviously got the strategic centre, which is Brierley Hill. Then you got the town centres of Dudley Hills, or in Stourbridge. Then you also got district centres like Kings Wimford, Lyons, Sedgley. But I think what's missing is underneath that sits the local centres. And I think this really refers to, if we're going to really make this success, and this is going to be a neighbourhood placement, we need to ensure that those local centres, we all got them in our wards, Amber, Cold, Gorner, Woodhall, Netherton, Cold, Wimford, Pensted. We need to mention, in Shell Corner, obviously we need to make sure those centres, the council does show a bit of TLC, because those are the centres that are looking a bit jaded, because the big centres tend to get all the funding, whereas the local centres haven't had any investment for years. They need a bit of tweaking here and then, because if you look at it, those are the beating hearts of these neighbourhoods. You can, having done regeneration for many years, you can normally tell an area by how many empty shops there are in the centres. So I think that, in a sense, is something that we need to, if this is going to work, through obviously yourself and Jim said, we need to make sure those centres are given a bit of investment or improvements, because it's the local people who are isolated tend to go to the local shops to do the shopping. So I think it's imperative we do that. Thank you.
Councillor Stanley.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to agree with the words that have just been used by Councillor Sahota. He's explained very, very well indeed about keeping things local. What I want to refer back to is back to 1966, when it all started with Dudley becoming enlarged, is that unfortunately Coasley was split into two. So we have the independent state of Coasley, which is in Dudley, and the rest of it is in Wolverhampton. And part of it is served by an MP for Wolverhampton, and part of it is served by an MP from Dudley. If I give you some example how close this is, going back to the days of the Sedgley Urban District Council, when you stand on Sedgley Beacon, which is the highest point in Sedgley or locally, it's 777 feet above sea level. And believe it or not, when you look out to the east, the next highest point to is the Ural Mountains in Russia. And I'll give many a talk about the geology of the beacon itself, and it starts the limestone ridge, etc., etc. But the situation is now we've got in Sedgley with the beacon, the main part where the tower is in Dudley, and then just a few feet, not yours, a few feet away, you're in Wolverhampton. So we do get a lot of people cross over between Dudley and Wolverhampton. So please be quite sympathetic when you're dealing with Coasley in the north of the borough, because you have got two different identities. You've got the Wolverhampton bit and the independent state of Coasley, which is in Dudley. So be very careful how you tackle that area when it was split in two, because communities have got very long memories. People have been spoken to by grandparents and the rest of where it used to be and so forth. So I think it's only fair that we should give that, that due respect for the area and the history of the area. And I'll shut up at that.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. It's always good to have the little history lessons during these scrutiny meetings. I really appreciate it. But I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's not just a Coasley and Sedgley problem. I'm guessing that you have this in Halzoe North, because where does Halzoe North end and Blackheath begin? I'm not entirely sure. Quinton, yeah, and for us as well, like how many people in Cradley? I mean, it pains me when I hear it, but a lot of people consider Cradley and Cradley Heath to be largely the same thing. It makes me feel a bit sick, but it's and how do we work on that? I mean, is there anything the council can do around when those identities and those communities are not just cross-border within the borough, but external to the borough as well? And Damien, did you want to come in as well?
Thanks, Chair. I'm not going to talk about the Sedgley Beacon. Councillor Stanley did that very quite eloquently. This is a framework to bring communities together, something that we haven't had before. And there's obviously a lot of passion from different areas of the borough, you know, and this is a great piece of work that Anne and the team have done now, you know, to bring that together. As it progresses, you know, you're at the preliminary stages there with what Anne's shared with us tonight. It's really encouraging. You know, and I certainly, you know, a lot of my family come from Gornal, and there's a big difference between Gornal and Upper Gornal, you know, so I think we all take on board, you know, those differences, but to put a framework in place that's going to bring those communities together has got to be a positive thing, and I'm looking forward to it, and I know Anne said it, Simon is as well, and working with other members to bring those communities together and build on this framework.
Thank you. I will have one final comment, and I guess it's a little bit, considering the passion in the room that there clearly is, what support can the committee offer going forwards? Because this doesn't seem to me like an item that we really want to have once and then we come back at the end of it and figure and see what's happened. And it does seem to me that there seems to be some scope here for some kind of working group of those people who are most interested to support that, and that I suspect will be best formed by a branch of this committee. I don't know if it's something that you've already considered or if it's something that you want us to consider now or in the next municipal year.
I would wait and let the process start and then see where we start then before we put a working group into place, really, before you've got the foundations built.
Yeah, just very quickly. So I actually think, and we talked about this, didn't we? And with Nick as well, that this concept is kind of strangely started in the right place for me, because it's about co-design and working up a concept. And even through the last couple of meetings, it's been incredibly helpful getting your input into helping shape it. So of course, it's got to go through the council's process of becoming policy and approval. But I've certainly learned so much from this group. So as part of that approval process, yes, absolutely, we would want members involved individually as advocates in various committees, kind of advocating the need for this going forward, but actually being that working group to actually help to transition it and move it forward. So that would be part of the proposal as this gets formalised and moves through the decision-making process within the council over the next couple of months. So very, you know, engaged at a local level, at a ward level, as these new things, you know, pop up, as these new townships in terms of working groups take place, but also that this kind of forum, perhaps, yes, as a subgroup of scrutiny, but that's something we can start to consider as it goes through the approval process. So, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I don't think there are any further recommendations on that item. So we can move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much for that. The next agenda item is agenda item 8, which is the Communities and Growth Scrutiny Committee Action Tracker and Future Business. Do members have any comments? No. Thank you very much. And on to agenda item 9, but there are, does that make sense? There are no questions under Council Procedure Rule 11.4, and there are no further agenda items. I think, am I right to think that this is the last agenda meeting? So I think just from me and Councillor Roberts, thank you very much for the work over the last municipal year. I've had a great time chairing this committee, and I hope you found it very valuable, and I hope you feel that we've managed to contribute to council decision making and holding the administration to account for the decisions it makes. And with that, I declare this meeting closed. Thank you all for attending and for your contributions tonight. Thank you to officers, and have a safe journey home.